All right. Oh, wait, hang on. Make sure the camera lens is clear. I've noticed when I'm editing, sometimes the top half of the screen is really blurry, and then there's like a line and everything below it is clear. And I don't like that. So, all right. I know more or less who watches my channel, and I know that there's a fair amount of my subscribers that are here because of one thing or another. Some of them are here for the cat. Some of them are here for the Power Stroke sitting over there. Some of them are here because they want to see if I do anything with that combine. Some of them might even be here because of that goofy ass sprayer right there. But today's subject is going to be the cat because, incidentally, I was going to do a video about this today. I've been thinking about this thing pretty hard for the past week or so. And I went on my my YouTube to see when the last video was on this when I uploaded it, because I thought, man, it's been about a year, hasn't it? It's been a year to the day. Okay, today is November 11th, 2024. The last video I did on this, I uploaded on November 11th, 2023. So, make of that what you will. So, the previous videos I put out on this suck. They're kind of all over the place because it started out as one idea, and then halfway through filming I turned it into another idea, and I tried to do 8,000 things at once that I probably shouldn't have done. So the previous videos on this thing suck, and I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, the next video I'm going to do differently. I'm going to make better because I've come a little ways in the video production department, right? And then, well, then I got to really thinking about a lot of stuff on this cat, and we're going to talk about that in today's video because I got to face facts with this thing, okay? So, since it's been about a year, as you can imagine, when I got done with the last video on this, I didn't just stick this project on the back burner. I took it off the stove, let it cool down, and I put it in the freezer. And when I was perusing my mental freezer of ideas the other day, I was just thinking about this, because it's right here. I look at it every day. I just never really thought about it too much until the past week. And I thought about everything I needed to do to it because I was going to order some parts and stuff to it. What prompted the thought was that I bought all that threaded rod for studs for the pony motor. And then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, those are all through holes. How am I going to stop those from threading in too much and staying tight while I assemble everything? And then I thought, well, what if I put JB Weld in the middle and, you know, and make it a real cheap stud, right? And at that point, immediately after I had that thought, you know, I thought, you know, this isn't the Red Green Show. If I'm looking at doing stuff like that, we just need to readdress the strategy for this Caterpillar. And the strategy for this cat, there's that tub I've been looking for right there. The strategy, the conclusion that I had to come to with this is that it's too much. I was trying to hillbilly this back together, and it's not going to pay dividends. I don't like doing that. I don't have to do that because this is not an essential machine, okay? This serves zero purpose here. Absolutely none. It will not push dirt because the hydraulic cylinders are shot. The tracks are worn out. The whole undercarriage is a write-off, damn near. The pony motor, well, I'll have to uncover this here in a minute. I'm pretty sure the pony motor is starting to get end play in the crankshaft, which, if you know anything about these cross-mounted starting engines, that's bad. That's very bad. And it's only going to get worse. And there's a fix for it, but it requires a whole bunch of tools and stuff that I just don't freaking have. I don't have a shop. I have to do everything out in the open here with this. And it needs more work. It needs more work than I can do out here. What I'm looking at doing, just getting it running and stuff, is all great, and I can do that. But it just needs too much work. It needs to come into the shop and be stripped down and cleaned and resealed and worked, and it just needs a mechanical restoration is what it needs. And I'm not going to sit out here and half-ass this thing and fiddle with it. It's just not worth the time and effort. So I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed that I'm not getting back to this, because chances are good that you subscribed here because, oh, he's working on a D4. That's cool. I want to see where it goes. Even though my video productions were extremely half-assed, you just wanted to see stuff about the cat, and you weren't particularly picky about who was doing it, the videos, right? You needed your cat fix. I understand it. Believe me, I do. And now you're probably be like, well, what the hell? So now you're not going to work on it? And the short answer is no, I'm not going to work on it. I don't have time. I don't have a space to do it. I don't have the money. There are other projects we need to do. And as I said, this thing serves zero functional purpose. Even if it was running and the hydraulic cylinders were not shot, it will not push. It doesn't push a lot of dirt. It really doesn't. For what it is, it will. But that Kubota over there will push twice what this Cat does. It's the skid steer is so much more efficient. Literally anything's more efficient than this. I'm not trying to bag on this because, again, for what it is, it does a really good job. It's impressive how much weight this thing has to move, and you can still, if I could get traction, I could pile loose fill in front of this blade, and I could still push it. You know, I could pile this blade full, and this is not the standard small blade that you usually see on these 4s. I mean, this is one of the bigger ones. You don't see a lot of these. You usually see the ones that only come up to about here, right? They're only about so high, which is a little bit better in a lot of ways. But this is a big blade. It's heavy blade. And you're asking a lot of this poor little 4-cylinder, you know, to push all that, plus the weight of the rest of the machine. It's just a lot. So here's the conclusion that I came to after thinking about what I had to do, the tools and parts I had purchased to do all that work, and what all else needs to be done to it. Here's what I've decided. I am going to put this thing back together. I'm going to get it running. Okay? I have no idea if that's going to be on camera or not. All right? I don't. I just really don't. But I am going to put the pony motor back together. I'm going to get it running. It only has to run long enough to get this diesel started. I know the diesel will start, even though here's another problem that we are going to address. Ugh. You see that? You see how quick that's running off there? Hang on. Oh, yeah. There's fuel in that oil. That is not good. Now, it'll still lubricate enough. It's not so thin that if I start the engine, it's going to ruin it. But it's not heavy enough for me to go out and work with this. Okay? So the plan is, back to the point, I'm going to get this running. I'm going to drop the blade because it's freaking useless. I can't do this. You know, the blade... I mean, look at this. This is never going to hold anything. All it has to do is pick this thing up. I'm going to drop the blade somewhere, and then I'm going to have the rest of the tractor just bare, like so. I mean, obviously, all the hydraulics and stuff will still be on it. And I'll park it somewhere, and then if we need to move it or whatever, we'll just hook onto it and pull start it, something like that. And then eventually, when I have room in the shop, and I have time, and I have nothing better to do, I'll pull this thing up there, and we'll get to work on it, and we will address all the major issues, which we will talk about in the next segment. But I'm pretty sure I can get this blade off without any major issue. It's just a couple of, you know, actually it's just that link, that dog bone there, wishbone, whatever you want to call it, and that back there on each side at the bottom end of the track frame. And just disconnect that, pull the blade out. And you know, if I can't get this thing running, well, guess what? We have a skid steer now that actually works. And I could just disconnect the blade here and we could just pull the tractor backwards because, well, we have some room to do that now. All right, well, let's start with the obvious stuff. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell, but I don't know if you can hear that. There is just a little bit of end play on this. It's not bad, okay? I mean, it's really not. Let me see if you can. It's hard for me to do that, but that clunking you hear, that flywheel it's got end play in it, okay? Or the crankshaft does on the starting engine. It's not bad. I could run it for probably quite a while, and it would be all right. But I'm getting really nervous because I've watched Squatch253. He's done a lot of videos on cats. Granted, most of his stuff is on D2s. But in his videos, he's broken stuff down, and he showed everybody how it all works and goes together. That's where a lot of my information on the starting engines, at least, and the rest of these Caterpillar tractors comes from, is just watching that stuff, seeing how Cat designed it all and how it breaks down and the changes they kind of made over the years. So, knowing that, the crank getting play like that is kind of a harbinger of a bad time. And again, it is fixable, but it requires a lot of work, which I'm not against doing. It's just I'm not set up for it. So there's that issue. In addition to the rest of the starting engine being disassembled, the carburetor off of it, all that good stuff. Okay, that's the first thing that really concerns me. We mentioned fuel in the oil on the diesel engine. We're going to talk about the diesel engine next. I want to focus on the starting engine for right now. I want to go in segments. All right. The second biggest issue is the starting pinion drive. Okay. We'll move. Water everywhere. All right. So, oh, that's floppy. Okay. This right here for the starting pinion latch mechanism. Shocker, I have to hold this into place for that pinion to stay engaged to start the diesel. All right, the clutch in here is a little loose. It over centers okay, but the brake is non-existent. The discs need to be messed with, basically. But that pinion, I tried adjusting the latches on it because it was loose, and I adjusted them enough that I got it to snap in and actually stay engaged while I was cranking the engine under compression. Because when I first got this thing going years ago, the issue was that once you put the diesel under compression, it would kick the pinion out. So I finally got it where it would stay under compression, and that was nice. Because traditionally what I have to do is bleed the injectors off while this is just running out of compression. So the fuel's on the whole time, which, yeah, that's probably bad. And then when I get ready to start it, I pull the compression release and hold the pinion engaged until the diesel starts, and then I let off. It kicks the starting pinion out, and the diesel engine's running, and we're all good. That's not how you're supposed to do it. How you're supposed to do it is you fire the pony up, make sure it's all warmed up, you engage it to the diesel engine. The diesel's decompressed, right? So it spins pretty easily, pretty freely. Then what you do is you put it under compression and let it crank. Okay, builds oil pressure, all this good stuff. Then you put the fuel to it and it takes off, kicks the starting pinion out, your diesel engine's running, shut the gas off to the pony carburetor to shut it down, and you're ready to run. So all that explanation is to say this. I adjusted the latches where I could get the pinion to stay engaged cranking under compression, but the minute I added fuel and the diesel started to fire, it would kick the pinion out. Trying to adjust it tighter, I couldn't get it engaged. But it was too loose on the next setting down to stay engaged when the diesel started to fire. So I still have to hold it in place to get the diesel engine to fire, which means the whole starting pinion system has to come out, and I have to analyze it, and it probably just needs to be rebuilt. It's tired. This whole thing's tired. Okay, I don't know exactly how many hours are on this. The hour meter doesn't even work. Pretty sure the hour meter's pegged out. Well, actually, I'm pretty sure it just quit working. So if I take all this out here, I have to pull the starting engine off. Okay, well, if I'm going to pull the starting engine off, that means I have to have all that stuff in there to mess with. I probably should just rebuild the starting engine, right? Well, I'm not set up to do that, okay? Could I get by without rebuilding the starting engine? Yes, I could, right? But then, here's the other thing. In order to get this pinion and all this other stuff out, I got to pull this whole fuel tower, injection pump, governor, maybe not the tower itself, but the injection pump and the governor, all this stuff has to come off in order to get all this out. The pony has to come out. All right, that's doable. But if I'm going to do all this, then I got to reseal all this stuff. Now we come to the fuel and the oil on the diesel, which is the biggest issue. The diesel engine runs fine. I'm not too worried about it. The injection system's okay. I'm really not worried about the diesel. That's the one thing that I probably wouldn't address other than resealing it. It leaks fuel into the oil. It did this when I first got it running. My great uncle helped me replace the packing in the transfer pump. There's a shaft that comes up, and there's graphite packing around it and a spring that keeps that packing seated so that, you don't run fuel into your crankcase. We replaced that packing, and he said when we did that the new packing was a lot better than what he had done previously. Okay, so we solved that issue. Except it's still getting fuel in the oil, which means it's the seal right here between the fuel tower and the injection pump. I believe is where that seal is at. That has to be replaced. The injection pump crankcase, for lack of a better word, is always full of freaking fuel, okay? I mean, and I'm pretty sure it's coming from here because of all this other stuff, and that's why I have to bleed the injectors off, because you know how it is. Do the math, extrapolate. You guys are smart. You'll see what I'm saying. I'm not explaining it very well. So right now, what we've already established is that I have to pull the pony motor off. I have to pull the starting pinion system. Okay, I have to pull the injection pump, the governor. I have to reseal all this stuff. That's all doable, right? I could do it out here. Oh, it's just a few seals and some gaskets. What's the big deal? All right, well, we're not done with issues here, okay? The hydraulic pump here leaks. Shocker, okay? Everything on this diesel engine leaks bad enough that if I was going to pull all this crap, I might as well reseal the diesel engine, which means pulling the diesel engine out of the machine. Okay, well, that's not such a big deal because here's the other thing. Okay, so like the clutch linkage, there, disengage, engage. The clutch over center is okay. The clutch doesn't slip, but I'm pretty sure the clutch is sacked out. And I know at the very least, the linkage up here on the lever, I mean, look at that. That's just stupid. All the linkage, the spider, the throwout bearing, the bronze collar that goes around the throwout bearing, all that stuff is loose. It's shot. It needs to be taken out, reworked completely. You know, the cup that's supposed to have felt in it that runs oil down to the throwout bearing, all that stuff has to be reworked. Okay? All of it. The steering clutches, right, they're not horrible, but they are goofy. All right? The levers down here are all screwed up. The brakes are kind of a joke, really. And I noticed how much of a joke they were because when I used to pull a drag with this occasionally, if you got a load of dirt behind that drag where you would slow the tractor down, you didn't need to use the brakes to turn. And that's kind of how I realized how sacked out this thing was, because if there's no load on it and you use the brake to turn, you can slam on the brake and push on it as hard as you can, and it'll just kind of barely turn. The brakes, I imagine the friction material's gone. That's what it kind of feels like. The brake lock doesn't work as a minor thing. The transmission, oh wait, hang on. Actually, that's not too bad. Hell, that doesn't have a lot of water in it. Or if it does, it's not at a place I can see it. This used to be getting water in it. That's why I had the tub over the clutches and stuff, because it's getting in through the boot here on the shifter. But anyway, all that stuff, you know, the clutch, the starting pinion, the fuel pump, the fuel in the crankcase on the diesel, the leaks that are so bad, like this, I can't do that. That needs to be cleaned. Every bit of oil that sticks to this is a little bit less that the engine can cool itself. It's just not a good deal. Everything leaks so bad it needs to be fixed. Hydraulic cylinder's worn out, obviously, right? Steering clutches and stuff are kind of done. I think the steering clutches themselves are okay, but if I'm going to take all this apart, I might as well replace them with the steel and bronze discs instead of the steel and I guess they're asbestos friction discs, right? Might as well do all that. The rear end throws an enormous fit when you put it in reverse. It doesn't like it. The finals on this side leak because I always have to add gear oil to this side. We can look down in here and they leak. Now, if you run it for a little bit and you park it just right, it leaks less, but it still leaks. I'm pretty sure this side leaks as well. So there's all that to be addressed. And then we come to the biggest part, which is the tracks. And the more I look at these tracks, every time I come out here and I look at these tracks and the undercarriage, I'm like, man, this is just done. It's sacked out. It get up and go, got up and left, you know? The shoes, well, the grousers are worn down considerably. They're supposed to be thicker than that. These are getting real sharp right here. The sprocket is actually okay. The pins and bushings have been turned on this before. I do know that, but when you look at this running, you can see the sprockets having to work to kind of suck that next link in to pull it. As you can see, the rollers are hitting on the pin bosses. Is this the master link? That might be the master link. That's kind of cool. So the chains are, I mean, they're just thin. They are beyond acceptable wear. I know that. Then we get to the rest of the track frame, the tension spring for the idler. I mean, just look at this. Look at this rust. It's flaking apart. The rollers down in here, they were welded up at one time, but they're done. You know, they're wearing in not good like they're supposed to be. This carrier, it's not the worst ever, obviously. It's mainly the chains, you know, the tracks themselves that are bad. This adjustment spring, this is not going to work anymore. It's rusted out. The C channel that the track frame runs on up here, it's okay. But you get back in here, and I think on the other side it's worse because the dirt was never washed off this. I was the first person to clean the dirt off this in who knows how many years. And all of the iron that's on that C channel for the track frame, it's all flaking and coming apart. Now, there's enough steel left in there to keep everything straight and all that, but it's not going to hold up over time. So the whole undercarriage needs to be reworked. I can get a lot of those parts, and I can get a lot of those parts for a decent amount of money, you know, not a ridiculous amount. But still, that's just a lot of work, right? And tracks themselves are hard to find. Rollers, carriers, you can get all that if you look. You know, they made a lot of D4s. And I think there's some stuff you can do where you can take a newer D4 undercarriage and adapt it to an older tractor. But I'd have to check the ACMOC forums to confirm that. But the point is, the undercarriage is done. It's good enough to run around on, you know, to move occasionally. But this is not going to go out and plow all day. Okay, it's tired. It does not like that. Every time I run this, I tear it up more. All right, I imagine this thing has 10,000 hours on it. I don't know how it couldn't. Like I said, the hour meter doesn't work. I don't know how long it hasn't worked for. But this machine has to have at least 10,000 hours on it. It's tired. The only thing on this that's not completely sacked out is the diesel engine. The diesel's actually in very good shape. For how old it is, and I kind of don't want to rebuild it because I want to see how long it will run on the original engine before it has to be torn down and rebuilt. I'm kind of curious to see how long it'll go on factory build. It's doing pretty good so far, but you know, all this stuff, you stop and think about it, you look at it, it's just a lot of work, which I'm not against doing, but it's too much. And so my hillbilly half-ass starting engine rebuild just to get this thing running, well, for what purpose? I can't use it for anything. It's all sacked out. It's all loose. It's thrown a fit. It's tired. It's moved beyond TLC. All right. It has gone to full-blown mechanical restoration. If I pull this out, I have to pull that off. If I pull that off and this out, well, that has to come off too. If I take all this stuff out, then all this should be resealed. Well, it'd be stupid to reseal that and then leave the rest of the diesel engine that also leaks. And it would also be stupid to leave the diesel engine that leaks, or maybe I reseal the diesel. Well, the hydraulic pump still leaks. Well, then I got to pull that off and reseal it, probably rebuild it because it's, you know. So I do all that, and then I'm like, okay, well, I got a brand new hydraulic system, resealed, all that. Diesel engine's resealed, new starting pinion, the injection pump's resealed and fixed up, and this is not even to mention what other issues I may run into if I were to take all this stuff off. Well, then you're still left with the sacked out undercarriage. The hydraulic cylinders need to be rebuilt. This is going to be a shit ton of work. And there's hydraulic shops that'll do it, but they don't do it for free, right? And then, you know, you come back and you still have all the clutch and stuff you have to mess with. So you pull the motor to do the clutch and reseal the whole thing. Let's say we do the whole front end on it. Well, great. We've still got the back end where the brakes don't work. The steering clutches are kind of The bull gears leak. The finals, they leak. Bad, and gear oil is not cheap, okay? And the back end throws a fit. So that's what, a bevel gear? Well, you can get bevel gears, but now you are into pulling the sprockets off and pressing the steering clutch drums off, and that's a lot because I've seen people do it. That requires an expensive press to do all that, and it's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. So there comes a point where you can't say, I'm going to stop here. That's the problem. There comes a point where you have to say to yourself, if I'm going to pull this out and do this, then I might as well do this because I would be stupid not to. We're not going to half-ass this stuff anymore. Which is why I'm not working on this cat. All right, that's why you haven't seen videos on it. In addition to me being busy and all sorts of other stuff. I'm going to do the bare minimum to get this running. drop the blade, park it where we can just pull start it if we need to move it when we need to move it, which shouldn't be very often. I'll park it out of the way somewhere. And then down the road, probably a couple years from now, when we've got nothing better to do and we have a shop that is actually usable and we have lathes and presses and all this other stuff, then I will pull this thing up into the shop and I'll strip it down and we'll go through it and we'll get it running, and it'll just be a cool thing to have on the channel. And this brings us back to the original point that even if I do all that, even if this thing was running right and had a good undercarriage and all that, at best, what this thing is good for is a, hey, you know what would be handy? The D4. That's the extent of the usefulness on this machine. Is, well, it would be handy if it ran for a couple things, but that's it. Because literally all this thing can do is push dirt and maybe pull an implement. But then I'd have to put hydraulic remotes on. All the stuff we have around here is too big for this, really, except the drill and maybe the 5-bottom plow. And I wouldn't mind going out and screwing around with this. I think it'd be fun, but there's no practical purpose. This isn't a necessary machine. Okay? The Kubota will outpull it. Every tractor we have will, well, okay, the Kubota will outpush it in dirt, sorry. Pretty much every tractor we have except the Ferguson will outpull this thing. All right? So it's just not practical to invest the time and the money on something that is, it's a toy, it's a novelty item. It was something back in its day. It's put in work. It's put in time. It deserves attention and care. But I'm not going to come out here and half-ass it just so we can have it on the channel regularly. I will half-ass it enough to put it back together because I don't really have a choice. I do want to run it, you know, and I'll try and get that done before Christmas, and I'll try and do a video on it. But if I don't, you know, don't be too terribly surprised. It's just, like I said, I'm just going to get it running. If the pony does not want to start after I put it all back together, then screw it. We'll use the skid steer. We'll drop the blade. We'll pull this thing backwards, and we'll just pull start it from now on. And I may just decide to put all the parts in a box, and we just pull it out of the way. I don't know. It's not hurting anything where it's at. So we'll just see. But that's all up in the air, and I just wanted to do a video and let you guys know this is what I've been thinking about with this. It's too much work for as much as I have time for, if that makes any sense. It just needs a lot. And I'm not against doing it, but I have bigger and better things I have to mess with. This is a toy, and that's how it has to be looked at. So, with all that being said, I think I've covered everything. If you've made it to the end, I appreciate it. I had set out with the intention of making better videos on this and come to the conclusion that probably not going to be making videos on it for a while. So if you subscribed here because you were waiting on stuff for the Caterpillar, I apologize that I haven't done anything with it. If you want to unsubscribe, I don't blame you if that's the only reason you're here. I get it's frustrating to see somebody start on a project, you express interest in it, and then they just drop it all of a sudden, and they don't get back to it for a year or two. I can understand the disappointment, but I'm going to be real with you guys. That's what you're looking at. Now that I made this video, chances are good that I probably will come out here and actually fix it and get it running by Christmas. But not all the stuff I just went through. More the hillbilly, oh, I got it running, let's move it. You might see that before Christmas, especially now that I made this video saying I'm probably not going to do any of that. That's how it goes. But I understand the disappointment. So if you're only here for this and you want to unsubscribe, I don't blame you. I would like for you to stay. But if this is the only thing that is catching your interest, you know, that's just the way it is. So, that should cover everything. I will let you guys go. If you made it to the end here, I appreciate it. I really do. And I have other stuff I'm going to make videos on that a little more practical. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I hope you guys will stick around and watch some of it. And we'll just get back to this thing when we can.